The great chamber on Nexus Prime had never seen such chaos. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the human delegation's platform, watching as the Lords of the Galaxy prepared to deliver their final judgment. The chamber was massive, built to hold representatives from thousands of worlds. Today, it felt like a courtroom. The Lords sat on their high thrones, looking down at the humans with cold eyes. Each Lord was ancient beyond human understanding. Lord Cathver had ruled for over 10,000 years. Lady Zephyra had controlled 3 star systems since before humans learned to write. They had seen species rise and fall like waves on a beach. Elena's hand shook slightly as she held the datapad containing Earth's final plea. 3 months of negotiations had led to this moment. 3 months of trying to explain why humans could not accept the galaxy's rigid caste system. 3 months of failing. The Council has reached its decision, Lord Cathver announced. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. The species known as humans has repeatedly shown itself to be chaotic, unpredictable, and dangerous to galactic order. Elena felt her heart sink. She had hoped, even at this late moment, that the Lords might show mercy, that they might understand that human creativity and independence were gifts, not curses. Your species refuses to accept the natural order. Lady Zephyra continued. You will not stay in your assigned roles. Your workers want to become scientists. Your scientists want to become leaders. Your leaders question ancient wisdom. This chaos cannot be allowed to spread. The evidence against humanity was damning in the Lord's eyes. Humans had been in the galaxy for only 50 years, but they had already caused problems. Human miners had invented new techniques that made older methods look foolish. Human doctors had cured diseases that other species said were incurable. Human engineers had built ships that flew faster than anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. But worst of all, humans had started asking questions. Why did some species have to serve others? Why couldn't a being choose their own path in life? Why did the Lords make all the important decisions while others had no voice? Dr. Sarah Chun, director of Earth's United Space Command, sat behind Elena. She had spent her whole career studying alien technology and culture. She understood better than most what this judgment would mean. The Lords were not just angry at humanity. They were afraid. The human species has been found guilty of disrupting galactic harmony, Lord Cathver declared. They have spread dangerous ideas of equality and choice. They have encouraged other species to question their proper place in the universe. This cannot continue. Elena stood up from her chair. Lords of the Galaxy, I ask you to reconsider. Humanity offers new solutions to old problems. We can help make the galaxy better for everyone. Silence, Lady Zephyra commanded. Your species has had its chance to join galactic civilization properly. You have failed. The sentence is exile. The word hit Elena like a physical blow. Exile meant complete separation from the galactic community. No trade, no communication, no travel beyond their home system. It was a death sentence for any species that depended on galactic technology and resources. Effective immediately, energy barriers will be placed around the Sol system, Lord Cathver announced. No human ship will be able to leave. No galactic ship will be able to enter. Your species will remain in isolation until you learn the consequences of chaos. Elena tried one last time. Please, give us another chance. We can find a way to work together. The decision is final, Lady Zephyra said coldly. Let this serve as an example to all species. Those who disturb the natural order will face the same fate. Within hours, the barriers began to form. Massive energy fields, powered by technology humans could barely understand, surrounded the entire solar system. Every human ship that tried to cross the barrier was turned back. Every attempt to send a message beyond the field failed. Dr. Chun stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, watching the last galactic transport ships leave Earth space. Captain Marcus Rodriguez joined her. He was young for a ship commander, only 35, but he had earned his position through skill and determination rather than birth. "It's really happening," Marcus said quietly. "They're actually cutting us off from everything." Sarah nodded. 8 billion humans, trapped in our own solar system. No access to galactic markets, no new technology, no allies. "What do we do now?" Marcus asked. Before Sarah could answer, her communication device buzzed. A message from the Galactic Council appeared on the screen. It was brief and final. "To the human species, you have chosen chaos over order, questions over obedience. Now you will face the consequences alone. Your primitive technology will not sustain you without galactic support. Your rebellious nature will be your destruction. You will be forgotten within a generation, serving as a warning to others who might consider defying the natural order of the universe." Sarah turned off the device and looked out at the stars. The barrier was invisible, but she could feel it there, cutting humanity off from the rest of the galaxy. For the first time in 50 years, humans were truly alone. "What do we do?" Marcus repeated. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and Marcus was surprised to see determination in her eyes instead of defeat. "We prove them wrong," she said simply. "They think our chaos will destroy us. They think we'll give up without their technology and support. They think we'll learn to be obedient." She turned to face Marcus directly. "They don't understand humans very well, do they? We've never been good at staying where people tell us we belong. We didn't stay in the trees when other species said we were too weak to survive on the ground. We didn't stay on Earth when people said space was impossible to reach. And we're not going to stay in this cage they've built for us." Marcus felt a spark of hope. "You have a plan?" "Not yet," Sarah admitted. "But I know one thing about humans that the Lords forgot. When someone tells us something is impossible, we have a terrible habit of proving them wrong." The barrier completed its formation as they watched. Humanity was now completely cut off from the galaxy that had rejected them. But instead of despair, something else was growing among the humans who remained. Something the Lords had not expected. They were getting angry. And angry humans, as the galaxy would soon learn, were extremely dangerous. 5 years had passed since the Lords sealed Earth away from the galaxy. The energy barrier around the solar system still hummed with power, a constant reminder of humanity's isolation. Many alien species would have given up by now. Many had been designed by their evolution to accept whatever fate was handed to them. Humans were different. Dr. Sarah Chun walked through the expanded research facility on Luna Station. What had once been a small scientific outpost was now a massive complex that stretched across the lunar surface. Thousands of the brightest minds from Earth worked here day and night, united by a single goal: proving the Lords wrong. "Status report," Sarah asked Dr. Kim Nakamura, her chief technology officer. "The quantum threading project is showing real promise," Kim replied, his eyes bright with excitement. "We've managed to fold space on a microscopic level. If we can scale it up, we might have an alternative to faster-than-light travel that doesn't use the Lord's hyperlanes." Sarah nodded. This was exactly the kind of breakthrough they needed. The Lords controlled all faster-than-light travel in the galaxy through a network of hyperlanes. These were like invisible highways through space that allowed ships to travel between stars quickly. Without access to them, most species were trapped in their home systems, but humans had never been good at accepting limitations. "Show me," Sarah said. Kim led her to a laboratory where a team of physicists worked around a strange device. It looked like a metal sphere covered in wires and crystals. The crystals had come from alien technology that humans had captured or traded for before the exile. "Watch this," Kim said. He activated the device, and a small metal ball disappeared from one side of the sphere and appeared on the other side. It had not traveled through the space between. It had somehow folded that space so the 2 points became the same point. Impressive, Sarah said. How big can you make it? That's the problem. Every time we try to scale it up, the power requirements increase exponentially. We need a completely new energy source. Sarah frowned. Energy had been humanity's biggest challenge since the exile. They had been forced to develop everything from scratch without access to galactic technology. But they had made progress. Captain Marcus Rodriguez appeared in the laboratory doorway. He was no longer just a ship commander. 5 years of isolation had forced humans to organize differently. Marcus now led the Solar Defense Force, humanity's combined military and exploration arm. Sarah, we need to talk, he said. The asteroid mining operation is ahead of schedule. They walked together to an observation deck that looked out over Luna's surface. In the distance, they could see the automated mining ships that humans had built. These were not like anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of large, expensive ships that required crews, humans had built thousands of small, smart machines that worked together like a swarm. The self-replicating drones are working better than we hoped, Marcus explained. They're not just mining asteroids anymore. They're learning to improve themselves. Each generation of drones is more efficient than the last. Sarah watched the small ships dance through space, stripping resources from asteroids and building new ships from the materials. It was beautiful in a strange way, and it was something that would have horrified the Lords. The Galactic Council always said that artificial intelligence should be limited, Sarah mused. They were afraid of machines that could think for themselves. Their loss, Marcus replied. Our AI partners are helping us solve problems faster than we ever could alone. This was another human trait that puzzled other species. Where most aliens saw artificial intelligence as a threat to be controlled, humans had learned to work with it as an equal partner. The mining drones were not slaves. They were colleagues. Any word from the exploration teams? Sarah asked. Marcus's expression grew serious. That's the other thing I wanted to discuss. Team 7 thinks they found something. Team 7 was led by Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a young physicist who specialized in space-time theory. Her team had been working on the edges of the solar system, studying the barrier that kept humans trapped. They found Dr. Tanaka in a laboratory deep inside Ceres Station, humanity's newest research facility built into the dwarf planet. She looked exhausted but excited. We've been analyzing the barrier for months, Yuki explained. We think we understand how it works now. She brought up a holographic display showing the energy field around the solar system. The Lords are using a technique that folds space around us. They're not really blocking us from leaving. They're making the space around our system much larger than it appears. Sarah studied the display. So, if we tried to fly to the nearest star, we'd never reach it, Yuki confirmed. The distance keeps expanding as we travel. It's brilliant, really. We could fly for 1,000 years and never escape. But you found something, Marcus said. I smiled. The Lord's technology is very advanced, but it follows rules. It has patterns. And humans have always been good at finding patterns and breaking them. She manipulated the holographic display, highlighting certain areas of the barrier. There are weak points, places where the space folding is less stable. If we could generate enough power in exactly the right way, we might be able to punch through. How much power? Sarah asked. More than our entire civilization currently produces, Yuki admitted. But I have an idea about that too. She led them to another display showing the sun. We've been thinking too small. Why build power plants when we have a fusion reactor right here that's been running for billions of years? The idea was audacious, even by human standards. build a device that could tap directly into the sun's energy and use it to break through the Lord's barrier. It would require technology that did not exist and engineering on a scale never before attempted. "It's impossible," Marcus said after a long moment. "Probably," Sarah agreed. "Yuk," I grinned. "So we're definitely going to try it." This was perhaps the most human response possible. When faced with an impossible challenge, humans did not give up or accept defeat. They got creative. Over the following months, the Solar Tap project consumed the attention of scientists across the solar system. They had to invent new materials that could survive the sun's heat. They had to design robots that could work in conditions that would destroy any known technology. They had to solve problems that had never been solved before. And slowly, impossibly, it started to work. The Lords had made one critical mistake when they decided to exile humanity. They had assumed that cutting humans off from galactic technology would make them weaker. Instead, it had forced them to innovate in ways the galaxy had never seen. Galactic civilization was ancient and stable. When a problem arose, there was usually an established solution that had worked for thousands of years. Species were assigned roles, and they stayed in those roles. Innovation happened slowly and carefully, under the control of the Lords. Humans had no established solutions to fall back on. They had to invent everything from scratch. And their chaotic, unpredictable nature that the Lords hated so much was perfectly suited for this kind of rapid innovation. Dr. Chun stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, looking out at the construction ships building humanity's most ambitious project yet. The Solar Tap was taking shape, a delicate web of technology that would stretch across millions of kilometers. "Think it will work?" Marcus asked, joining her. "I have no idea," Sarah admitted. "But that's never stopped us before." Marcus laughed. "The Lords thought they were punishing us. I'm starting to think they did us a favor." Sarah nodded. The exile had been painful and difficult. Many humans had died because they could not access galactic medical technology. Many projects had failed because they lacked the resources they needed. But it had also done something unexpected, that it had united humanity in a way nothing else could have. Rich and poor, old and young, every nation and culture on Earth was working together toward the same goal. Not just survival, but freedom. And in the process, they were becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that would change everything. 10 years after the Lord's judgment, the first human ship emerged from the quantum threading corridor beyond the solar barrier. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the HS Independence, humanity's most advanced vessel, and stared at the impossible sight before them. They had done it. They had broken free. "All systems stable," reported Commander Lisa Park from the navigation station. "The quantum thread is holding. We're officially outside the Sol system for the first time in a decade." Marcus allowed himself a moment of pride. The Solar Tap had worked beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The massive array of collectors around the sun provided more energy than humanity had ever possessed. Combined with Dr. Tanaka's breakthrough in space folding technology, it had allowed them to punch through the Lord's barrier like it was paper. But this was not a mission of exploration or conquest. This was about something much more important. "Long-range sensors are picking up the signal," announced Lieutenant Chen Wei, the communications officer. "It's coming from the Karish mining facility, just as the intercepted transmissions indicated." For 2 years, human scientists had been listening to galactic communications that leaked through the barrier. Most of it was routine administrative traffic, but some signals told a darker story. Stories of slave species forced to work in dangerous conditions. Stories of beings who lived their entire lives without ever making a choice. The Lords ruled through fear and rigid control, but they also ruled through the labor of countless enslaved peoples. The Karish were one such people, forced to mine radioactive materials in the galaxy's most dangerous regions. "There," Commander Park said, pointing to the main screen. Visual contact. The asteroid mining complex was massive, a sprawling collection of industrial platforms and living quarters, built into a cluster of radioactive rocks. Even from a distance, they could see the harsh conditions. The asteroids glowed with deadly radiation that would kill most species within hours. "Dear God," whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission xenobiologist. She had volunteered for this mission despite being nearly 70 years old. "Look at the life readings. There must be thousands of them working in those conditions." The Karish were humanoid but adapted for radiation resistance. Their skin was thick and gray, their eyes were small to protect against harsh light, and their bodies were stocky to better survive in hostile environments. But even with these adaptations, the radiation levels would slowly kill them over years of exposure. "Are we certain about this plan?" asked Commander Park. "What if they don't want to be rescued?" It was a fair question. Humans had learned much about galactic culture during their exile, but they still had limited understanding of how deeply the caste system affected other species. Some beings had never conceived of life outside their assigned roles. "We offer them a choice," Marcus said firmly. "That's all we can do. If they choose to stay, we respect that decision. But they should know that alternatives exist." The Independents moved closer to the mining complex. As they approached, alarm signals began broadcasting from the facility. The overseers had detected their ship. "Incoming transmission," reported Lieutenant Chun. "It's from someone called Overseer Vakthul." The main screen activated, showing a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and multiple eyes. He wore elaborate robes that marked him as a member of a ruling caste. Behind him, humans could see Karish workers continuing their dangerous labor. "Unknown vessel, you are in restricted space," Overseer Vakthul announced coldly. "Identify yourself immediately." Marcus stepped forward. "I am Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the Human Solar Federation. We're here to speak with the Karish workers." All of Vakthul's eyes widened in shock. "Humans? That's impossible. Your species was exiled years ago. You cannot exist beyond your home system." "Clearly, we can," Marcus replied calmly. "Now, we request permission to speak with your workers." "Absolutely not," Vakthul snapped. "The Karish belong to the Galactic Mining Consortium. They are property, not people. You have no authority here." Dr. Vasquez stepped beside Marcus. "We're not claiming authority. We're offering information." "What kind of information?" "The kind that might interest people who have never been told they have choices." Overseer Vakthul's expression grew dangerous. "You will leave immediately, or we will summon the Lord's fleet to deal with you." Marcus smiled grimly. "Please do. We'd love to have a conversation with the Lords as well." The transmission cut off abruptly. Within minutes, the facility's defensive systems activated. Energy weapons began firing at the Independents, but the human ship's shields easily deflected them. Human technology had advanced considerably during the years of isolation. "Should we return fire?" asked Commander Park. "Not at the facility," Marcus ordered, "but scan for any ships that might threaten the workers." The Independents' advanced sensors quickly identified 3 armed vessels hiding behind the larger asteroids. These were the Overseer's ships, designed to prevent Karish workers from escaping or outside interference. "Take out their ship's engines," Marcus commanded. "Disable only. No killing unless they give us no choice." The battle was brief and one-sided. Human weapons technology had advanced far beyond galactic standards during the exile. The Overseer ships were disabled within minutes, their crews forced to evacuate to the mining facility. Then Marcus did something that shocked everyone watching. He opened a broadcast channel to the entire facility, speaking directly to the Karish workers. "People of Karish," he began, "my name is Captain Rodriguez. I represent a species called humans. We know you have been told that working in these conditions is your only choice in life. We're here to tell you that this is not true." The effect was immediate. Work stopped throughout the facility as hundreds of Karish workers looked up from their dangerous tasks to stare at the screens, showing this strange alien who claimed they had choices. "We've come to offer you alternatives," Marcus continued. "You can come with us to places where you won't be forced to risk your lives for other people's profit. Or you can stay here if that's what you prefer. But you should know that alternatives exist." Dr. Vasquez added, "We have medical technology that can heal the radiation damage to your bodies. We have worlds where you can live safely. And we have something your overseers have never given you: the right to decide for yourselves what you want to do with your lives." Overseer Vakthul's voice cut into the transmission. "Ignore these creatures. They lie. The natural order must be maintained. You are Karish. Your purpose is to mine." But something extraordinary began to happen. Karish workers throughout the facility started putting down their tools. They began walking toward the communication screens, their eyes wide with something they had never experienced before: hope. "This is Mektar," came a hesitant voice from one of the work platforms. The speaker was an elderly Karish, whose skin showed the scars of decades of radiation exposure. "You say we can choose?" "Yes," Marcus replied gently. "You can choose, but what would we do? Mining is all we know." Dr. Vasquez smiled warmly. "You can learn new things. You can discover what interests you. You can decide what you want to become." The concept was so alien to the Karish that many of them simply stood frozen, unable to process the idea. They had been born to mine. Their parents had been born to mine. Their children were destined to mine. The idea that this could change was revolutionary. "I want to see the sky," whispered a young Karish female. "I've never seen a sky without radiation clouds." "Then, you can see as many skies as you want," Marcus promised. Within hours, over half the Karish workers had chosen to leave with the humans. They boarded the Independence with wonder in their eyes, carrying few possessions because they had been allowed so few things to call their own. Overseer Vakthul raged and threatened, but he was powerless to stop them. The Lords had designed their system to control through fear and conditioning, but they had never prepared for someone to simply offer alternatives. As the Independents prepared to leave, Marcus received one final transmission from the facility. It was from the Karish who had chosen to stay. "Tell others about choice," said Mektar, who had decided to remain to care for workers too old or sick to travel. "Tell them the mining caste is not forever." "We will," Marcus promised. The Independence disappeared back into its quantum thread, carrying refugees to safety and carrying news that would shake the galaxy. The Lords had built their empire on the assumption that beings would accept whatever fate was assigned to them. But humans had just proven that even the most downtrodden beings yearned for freedom when given the chance to understand what freedom meant. In the days that followed, the rescue of the Karish miners became a symbol throughout the galaxy's underclass. Whispered stories spread from world to world. The exiled humans had returned, and they offered something no one else had ever offered. Choice. The Lord's perfect order began to crack, one liberated mind at a time. The alarm klaxons echoed through the Lord's command center on Nexus Prime. Lord Kethver stood before the massive tactical display, watching red warning lights spread across the galactic map like a plague. In the 6 months since the first Karish liberation, 47 facilities had been raided by human forces and their growing number of allies. "Status report," Lord Kethver demanded. Admiral Tekvar, commander of the Lord's Grand Fleet, stepped forward. His face showed the strain of recent defeats. The situation continues to deteriorate. The humans are not following any recognizable pattern of warfare. They strike without warning, disappear before we can respond, and somehow always know our patrol routes in advance. How is this possible? They've been isolated for 10 years. We believe they've been intercepting our communications, Admiral Tekvar replied. But more troubling is their technology. Our intelligence suggests they've advanced beyond anything we've seen. Their ships are faster, their weapons more precise, their tactics completely unpredictable. Lord Cathver studied the tactical display. Each red light represented a facility that had been liberated, its workers given the choice to leave or remain. But the problem was spreading beyond just the liberation raids. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy of work stoppages, questioning of authority, and open rebellions. The infection must be stopped, Lord Cathver decided. Assemble the Grand Fleet. We will crush this human rebellion and make an example that will remind the galaxy why order must be maintained. Lady Zephyra materialized beside him, her ancient form shimmering with contained energy. Brother, perhaps we should consider negotiation. The humans have shown remarkable negotiation? Lord Cathver's voice boomed through the chamber. They defied our judgment. They corrupted our carefully maintained order. They will be destroyed as an example to others. Within days, the largest fleet in galactic history assembled at the Karish homeworld. Over 10,000 ships of the line, representing the combined military might of dozens of subjugated species. It was a force that had never been defeated. Commanded by officers who had crushed rebellions for millennia, Admiral Jiang Wei stood on the bridge of the human flagship Defiance, studying the approaching Lord's fleet through her tactical displays. At 55, she had been Earth's most brilliant naval strategist before the exile. 10 years of planning for this exact moment had honed her skills to a razor's edge. Admiral, they outnumber us 100 to 1, reported Captain Sarah Kim, her tactical officer. Good, Admiral Jiang replied calmly. That means they're fighting the last war, not this one. The human fleet was indeed smaller, only 200 ships compared to the Lord's thousands. But these were not the vessels the Lords expected. Human engineering had taken radical directions during the exile, producing ships that blended technologies the galaxy had never imagined could work together. More importantly, the human fleet was not alone. Ships from dozens of liberated species had joined them, each vessel a hybrid of human innovation and alien adaptation. Karish ships that could operate in deadly radiation, Dekval vessels that could phase through solid matter, Morden fighters that could split into multiple smaller craft. Open channel to all ships, Admiral Jiang commanded. Begin Operation Cascade. What followed broke every rule of galactic warfare. The Lord's fleet approached in perfect formation. Thousands of ships arranged in precise geometric patterns that had proven effective for centuries. They expected the human fleet to meet them in organized battle lines, as had been done since the beginning of galactic civilization. Instead, the human ships scattered like startled birds. Admiral Tekvar watched in confusion as the enemy fleet simply disappeared from his sensors. Where did they go? Sir, his sensor officer reported. They're everywhere. Small groups are appearing throughout our formation. Our sensors can't track them all. This was quantum threading technology taken to its logical extreme. Instead of fighting one large battle, the humans had created hundreds of small battles happening simultaneously throughout the Lord's formation. Human ships would appear out of nowhere, strike a target, and vanish before return fire could be coordinated. But the real shock came when Admiral Jiang began broadcasting to every ship in the Lord's fleet. Attention crew members of the Grand Fleet. Her voice echoed through thousands of ships. My name is Admiral Jiang Wei of the Human Solar Federation. I want to speak to those of you who are not lords, not nobles, not officers born to command. I want to speak to the beings who actually operate these ships. Panic spread through the Lord's command structure. No enemy had ever spoken directly to their crews before. The entire galactic military was built on strict hierarchy and unquestioning obedience. You have been told that some beings are born to rule and others born to serve. Admiral Jiang continued. You have been told that questioning authority is wrong, that your only purpose is to follow orders. I'm here to tell you that this is a lie. On ship after ship throughout the Lord's fleet, crew members stopped their work to listen. These were beings from dozens of species who had never been told they mattered, never been asked what they wanted. The beings you call lords are not gods. They are not your natural superiors. They are simply individuals who have convinced others to obey them. And that means you can choose to stop obeying. Admiral Tekvar screamed orders to cut off the transmission, but it was too late. The human ships weren't just broadcasting. They were uploading data directly into the Lord's communication systems. Images of liberated worlds, testimonials from free workers, proof that alternatives to servitude existed. The effect was immediate and devastating. On the heavy cruiser Dominator, the entire engineering crew walked off their posts. On the battleship Absolute Authority, the weapons operators refused to fire on ships that carried their liberated cousins. On ship after ship, beings who had never questioned orders began asking why they should follow them. This is mutiny. Admiral Tekvar raged. Restore discipline immediately. But discipline was exactly what the Lords were losing. The human strategy wasn't just military, it was psychological. They were fighting the very foundation of the Lord's power, the assumption that some beings had the right to rule others. Captain Marcus Rodriguez piloted his fighter through the chaos of the battle, coordinating with liberated Karish pilots who flew their ships with desperate courage. They weren't trying to destroy the Lord's fleet. They were trying to save it from itself. Marcus to all units, he broadcast. Remember, we're not here to conquer. We're here to offer choice. This philosophy confused the Lord's forces even more. When human ships disabled enemy vessels, they didn't destroy them or take prisoners. Instead, they broadcasted again, asking the crews if they wanted to continue fighting for masters who saw them as expendable. The turning point came when the battleship Eternal Order, flagship of the Lord's Northern Fleet, simply stopped fighting. Its crew, mostly beings from the Veltar, species who had served the Lords for over 2,000 years, announced they were laying down their weapons. We have served faithfully, Captain Veltak announced over open channels. We have fought the Lord's wars and died for their glory, but we have never been asked what we wanted. Today, for the first time, someone has asked us to choose. We choose to stop fighting. The defection spread like wildfire. Within hours, over half the Lord's Grand Fleet had either stopped fighting or actively switched sides. Many ships simply left the battle, their crews deciding they had better things to do than fight for masters who had never cared about their lives. Admiral Tekvar found himself commanding a fleet that was rapidly dissolving around him. Thousands of ships remained loyal, but they were scattered and demoralized. Worse, they were facing an enemy they didn't understand how to fight. Sir, his communications officer reported. Lord Kethver is demanding a status report. Tell him. Admiral Tekvar paused, watching another squadron of ships defect to the human side. Tell him we are experiencing unprecedented tactical difficulties. Admiral Jiang watched the Lord's formation collapse and felt no joy in victory. This wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about freeing beings who had never known they were enslaved. Open channel to Admiral Tekvar, she ordered. The Lord's commander appeared on her screen, his face showing the strain of defeat. What do you want? "To offer you the same choice I offered your crews," Zhang replied. "You can continue fighting for masters who see you as expendable, or you can choose to be something more than just a tool of oppression." "I am Admiral of the Grand Fleet," Tekvar replied stiffly. "I have my duty." "And I respect that," Zhang said sincerely. "But duty should be a choice, not a chain. When this battle ends, think about whether the lords you serve have ever asked what you wanted. Think about whether there might be better ways to use your skills than crushing the dreams of others." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Tekvar staring at a tactical display that no longer made sense. The greatest military force in galactic history was falling apart, not because of superior firepower, but because someone had asked a simple question: why should you obey? By the battle's end, the Lord's Grand Fleet had effectively ceased to exist. Some ships limped home to report their failure. Others joined the growing alliance of free worlds. 25 years after the Lords had exiled humanity from the galaxy, Dr. Sarah Chun walked slowly onto the speaking platform of the first Galactic Assembly of Free Worlds. She was old now, her hair completely white and her movements careful, but her eyes still burned with the intelligence and determination that had sustained humanity through its darkest hour. The assembly hall was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Instead of the rigid hierarchy of the Lord's old chamber, this was a circular space where representatives sat as equals. No raised thrones, no positions of enforced deference. The 1,000 representatives from across the galaxy sat in groups that mixed freely, sharing ideas and solving problems together. The diversity was breathtaking. Tall Karish engineers sat beside tiny Veltar artists. Former slave species worked alongside beings who had once been their overseers, but had chosen to embrace a new way of life. Species that had been enemies for millennia found common ground in their shared commitment to freedom and choice. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Sarah began, her voice carried by translation devices to every corner of the hall. "When the Lords exiled us 25 years ago, they believed they were punishing humanity for our refusal to accept the natural order. They thought isolation would teach us the value of obedience." Gentle laughter rippled through the assembly. Everyone here knew how wrong the Lords had been. They could not have imagined that they were giving us exactly what we needed most: the freedom to become something they thought was impossible. Captain Marcus Rodriguez, now an elderly admiral of the Free World's defense fleet, watched from the observer's gallery. Beside him sat Admiral Zhang Wei, whose brilliant tactics had shattered the Lord's military might. Both had aged into the respected elder statesmen of the new galactic order. "Look how far we've come," Marcus whispered to Zhang. "When we broke through that barrier 10 years ago, did you ever imagine it would lead to this?" Zhang smiled. "I knew we could beat them militarily. I never guessed we'd end up saving them from themselves." She was referring to the strangest development of all. After the collapse of their grand fleet, many of the Lords themselves had eventually chosen to abandon their old ways. Not all, some still ruled small enclaves of worlds that clung to the old system. But surprisingly, many had discovered that being treated as equals rather than gods was actually more satisfying than having others grovel before them. Lord Cathver himself had been one of the most shocking converts. After years of bitter resistance, he had finally attended a Free Worlds assembly and been amazed to discover that beings actually listened to his ideas when he presented them as suggestions rather than commands. He now served as an advisor on galactic history, helping newly free species understand their own past. "The galaxy still faces challenges," Sarah continued from the podium. "There are ancient automated defense systems that need to be peacefully disabled. There are resource disputes that require fair solutions. Some beings still attempt to recreate the old system of domination and submission. But we face these challenges together, as free beings working toward common goals. In the audience, a young Karish engineer named Mektal, granddaughter of the old mining foreman who had first heard humanity's call for choice, listened with wonder. She had been born after the liberation and had grown up in a galaxy where she was free to pursue her interests. She had become a specialist in quantum engineering, working alongside human scientists to develop new technologies that served everyone rather than enriching a few. The old mining asteroids, where her grandmother had suffered, were now thriving. Research stations where beings from dozens of species worked together to unlock the secrets of the universe. What had once been places of suffering had become centers of learning and discovery. Some ask what humanity's gift to the galaxy has been, Sarah said. Some point to our technology, our military strategies, our economic innovations. These things have been helpful, but they are not our true gift. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces representing hundreds of worlds and thousands of species. Each one unique, each one free to chart their own course among the stars. Our gift has been a simple idea, that thinking beings do not have to accept the limitations others place on them. That every individual has the right to choose their own path, to question authority, to dream of better ways of living. The assembly erupted in applause that went on for several minutes. But it was not the forced acclaim of subjects honoring their rulers. It was the genuine appreciation of free beings, acknowledging a truth that had transformed their lives. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now in her 90s but still sharp as a laser, stood slowly in the section reserved for original Earth diplomats. She had been there at the beginning, watching humanity be exiled from the galaxy. She had lived to see that exile transform into the galaxy's liberation. When we first met the Lords, she said when the applause died down, they told us that chaos was our nature and would be our destruction. They were wrong about the destruction part, but they were right about one thing: we are chaos, but not the destructive kind they feared. She gestured to the assembled representatives. This is creative chaos. The chaos of new ideas challenging old assumptions. The chaos of individuals choosing their own destinies rather than accepting assigned roles. The chaos of beings from different worlds working together because they want to, not because they have to. Commander Lisa Park, who had served as navigator on the first human ship to break through the Lord's barrier, now directed the Free World's exploration program. The ships were not conquering new worlds. They were making contact with isolated species and offering them the choice to join the galactic community as equals rather than subjects. Every month we discover new species, she reported to the assembly. Some choose to remain isolated, which we respect completely. Others eagerly join our alliance of free worlds. But all of them now know that alternatives exist to whatever system they were born into. The most remarkable change was in how problems were solved. Under the Lord's system, solutions were imposed from above by beings who often had no understanding of local conditions. The free worlds had developed something entirely different. Collaborative problem-solving, where the beings most affected by an issue had the strongest voice in finding solutions. When water disputes arose between neighboring systems, the affected populations worked together to find sharing arrangements that benefited everyone. When ancient territorial claims created conflicts, beings chose to focus on future cooperation rather than past grievances. When new technologies raised ethical questions, scientists and philosophers from dozens of species debated together until consensus emerged. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes negotiations took longer than imperial decrees. Sometimes beings made choices that others disagreed with. Sometimes the messengers of freedom created temporary problems that authoritarian efficiency could have avoided. But the beings living in this new galaxy had discovered something the Lords never understood. That imperfect freedom was infinitely better than perfect slavery. We gather here not as subjects of distant rulers, but as partners in the greatest experiment the galaxy has ever seen. Sarah concluded her speech. We are proving that beings can govern themselves. That diversity makes us stronger rather than weaker, and that the universe is vast enough for everyone to find their own path among the stars. As the assembly session ended, representatives began forming small groups to discuss specific issues. There were no formal protocols, no rigid hierarchies. Beings simply talked to whoever they felt could help solve the problems they cared about. Admiral Rodriguez found himself in conversation with a former Lords General who was now helping to establish democratic institutions on recently liberated worlds. A Karish artist was showing her sculptures to a Veltar composer, exploring how their different forms of creativity could blend together. Young beings who had grown up free were teaching older ones who were still learning to make choices for themselves. Dr. Sarah Chun walked slowly through the gathering, marveling at what humanity's exile had ultimately created. The Lords had intended to isolate and punish one chaotic species. Instead, they had accidentally created the conditions for the galaxy's transformation. Any regrets? Admiral Jiang asked, joining Sarah at an observation window that looked out over the capital city of New Geneva, built on a world that had once been a Lord's administrative center. About being exiled? Sarah considered the question. Strange as it sounds, no. If the Lords had accepted us into their system, we might have eventually learned to conform. We might have become just another obedient species in their vast hierarchy. Instead, we became the catalyst that brought down the entire system. We became something better, Sarah corrected. We became teachers. Not of technology or tactics, but of something more fundamental. The idea that every thinking being has the right to choose. Outside the window, the city hummed with activity. Beings from dozens of worlds lived and worked together, not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. Children of different species played in the parks, growing up in a galaxy where their differences were celebrated rather than used to justify hierarchy. Captain Rodriguez, now in his 80s but still spry, approached the two women.